Chapter 1794, Waiting in Silence. The expression on Prodaja's face was no different from that of the quartermaster just now. Who in their right mind fights like this all the time? Loser! Prodaja's current feeling was that he had been duped. Even though he had been very careful to guard against it, he knew that Zhang Yi had a huge storage space. He just didn't expect Zhang Yi to fight like this. Now, the confident promise he made at the beginning, that he could provide all the necessary supplies on the battlefield, had instead become a big pitfall that left him speechless. He couldn't very well not give the weapons to someone who was fighting the battle for him, could he? You must not normally fight like this, right? Otherwise, who could sustain the kind of consumption you're doing? Prodaja stuttered as he spoke, pointing at Zhang Yi with a twisted face. Nonsense! Zhang Yi retorted unceremoniously, who fights in their daily lives while facing tens of thousands of fearless mechanical life forms at the same time. You should know that ordinary supernatural powers are very ineffective against them, while thermal weapons can actually play a good role. Of course I need to prepare more guns and cannons. Prodaja was still not convinced, but that doesn't mean we have to empty our entire arsenal. Zhang Yi laughed and said, "Who knows what the future holds? Don't worry, I'll return them to you if you don't use them all." Prodaja didn't believe a word. These weapons were all newly developed in the past 2 years, not the old models from 3 years ago. Apart from being more powerful, they were also very expensive to make. Once Zhang Yi took them, he definitely wouldn't return them. His heart was bleeding, but then Zhang Yi said something that made him almost slam his hand on the table. "When I'm done using it, I'll come back for it. So tell your arms factory to step up production." Prodaja cut off the communication and didn't want to deal with Zhang Yi anymore. He slammed his fist down on the table, trembling with anger. "You're good, Chaos. You're really crafty." Seeing Prodaja's angry expression, Aliyev and Vladimir exchanged glances and curiously asked, "What's got you so worked up?" They had just celebrated together. Prodaja told the two men what had just happened. Even in their position, they couldn't help but feel a little sad. Vladimir smoked his cigar and said after a long pause, "Just give it to him. Put him in the most dangerous area and let him fight for us. Don't waste any of the weapons we got from Fremons." Aliyev said, "Have the humanoid demons that appeared in Karen previously appeared again?" Prodaja's brows furrowed as he heard this epithet, which reminded him of that terrifying night. "No. Currently only those mechanical legions are active in Fremons. The main areas of activity are in the Far East and the Campbell Federation and the Northwestern Federation regions." Aliyev put down the cigar in his hand, and a powerful, dry hand supported his chin as he spoke with a solemn expression. "The core members of the Pantheon are now mainly stationed in Samarin City. If traces of mechanical life are found in unknown areas, let the mutant troops from other countries go over there to investigate. In this way, even if those terrifying demon gods appear, they will bear the brunt of the risk. After they have eliminated the crisis, our people will go down. There must be some major secret behind the activities of mechanical civilization. If Fremons can obtain that secret," the corner of his mouth curled up, and a cunning light flashed in his ice-blue pupils. "Fremons, perhaps it can reproduce the glory of the Suruman's era, and even become the most powerful civilization on this planet." Vladimir nodded approvingly. "As long as we have mastered powerful enough strength, then all previous losses of population, territory, and resources will be nothing." Zhang Yi returned to his residence with an entire arsenal of weapons and equipment. Everyone couldn't help but laugh when they thought of Prodaja's ugly face at the time. "This guy, even though we came here to help, he was always scheming against us. Now that we've dealt with him so severely, I think he'll be furious." Fatty Sue's smile never left his face. Zhou Kir gently said to Zhang Yi, "But after all, this is Fremon's territory. And next, we need to use their intelligence to get the trajectory of the mechanical civilization's activities. Things have reached a stalemate. What if they target us?" Zhang Yi said disapprovingly, "If I don't do it, he will still target us. The difference is just that in the beginning, he treated everyone equally and would give the most dangerous missions to our teams of mutants from the major powers. And now, he will give us the most dangerous missions. Zhang Yi shrugged, but so what? We are in a cooperative relationship with each other, but we can leave at any time if we get into trouble. But if things go wrong, Fremons will be finished. Zhang Yi sneered. They think that they can sell the intelligence they have for a good price because they think this is their country, but this kind of behavior is no different from picking chestnuts out of the fire. Those guys are crazy. Instead of thinking about how to let the people in their country survive, they're thinking about how to maximize their own interests. Deng Shintong shrugged his shoulders. Just routine. No big deal. But the benefits we can get from the mechanical army are indeed considerable. Really going against them would be a loss. Uncle, you said with a face full of conflict. But there's not much we can do. After all, this is their territory. Fatty Su helplessly shrugged his shoulders. Zhang Yi rubbed the back of his hand and said indifferently, there's no rush. We'll just wait and see what happens. Ling, the spy, who was following them, was sitting on the sofa with her legs wide open, a high-calorie energy bar in her mouth, and a device the size of a game console in her hands, operating it attentively. Fatty Su's eyes lit up and he immediately went up to her, smiling and asking, "What game are you playing?" Ling looked up at him and gave him an unhappy look. "Game? Do you really think I'm that idle?" Fatty Su then saw clearly that the device she was operating had all sorts of complicated lines and cursors on it, as if marking something on a map. She held up the electronic device in her hand and showed it to Zhang Yi. "Big boss, I have some very expensive information in my hands. Do you want to buy it?" Zhang Yi looked up, somewhat curiously at the spy who had been in Fremons for many years. "Oh? What kind of information? What do you mean?" "It's about those metal lumps, of course." Zhang Yi's eyes twinkled. He was very curious about the young girl in front of him. On the first day he arrived in Fremons, it was under her leadership that Zhang Yi encountered the mechanical army. However, it was clear that even Fremons, as a world-class military power, was unable to accurately determine the trajectory of the mechanical army's activities. They can only catch the mechanical legions when they are active on the surface. And Ling, does she have more powerful technology than Fremons? Right now, Zhang Yi still doesn't know what this girl's abilities are, but perhaps it is her special abilities that allow her to obtain a lot of important information in Fremons without being discovered. "Buy it. Name your price," Zhang Yi said without hesitation. Ling snapped the energy bar in her hand and said, "The kind of energy canister you gave me before. I want 10 of them." The energy canisters that store metamaterials each contain the purest metamaterials, and can release an energy equivalent to nearly 10,000 tons of gasoline. Ling's price was extremely high, but Zhang Yi did not hesitate for a moment and directly pulled 10 canisters out of dimensional space and threw them to her. Ling beamed with joy. Usually when she goes about doing business, the other party will want to negotiate the price to some extent. But Zhang Yi's generosity was even more impressive than that of Deng Shintong, the rich young man. Not to mention some of the high-level Fremons figures she knew. She picked up the device in her hand and transmitted a data chart to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi opened it and saw that it was marked with the current areas where Fremons had identified mechanical life forms. It was very considerately marked with different colors according to the number of mechanical life forms, and even detailed coordinates were indicated. After taking a quick look, Zhang Yi looked up at Ling and said, "You're inside Fremons." Ling smiled and narrowed her eyes. As long as there are people somewhere, there's business to be done. After all, the more war-torn a place is, the more valuable the intelligence is. "You're a professional spy," Zhang Yi exclaimed. Uncle Yu rubbed his chin and said happily, "In that case, does this mean that we don't need to rely on Fremon's intelligence and can act on our own?" Zhang Yi gave a faint smile and said, "No, that's not what I had in mind." This statement filled everyone with surprise. What were they here for? Wasn't it to obtain epic-transcending technological power from the mechanical civilization? Now that the intelligence was in front of them, why did Zhang Yi not go? Ling also looked at Zhang Yi with a playful expression, and there was a strange radiance flowing in her bright eyes. She had thoughtfully marked several locations on the map for Zhang Yi, all of which were areas where large mechanical legions were operating. Unexpectedly, Zhang Yi had chosen not to act. Yang Xinxin said, "There is nothing wrong with your choice, brother. First, even if we have clear intelligence ourselves, as long as we take action, we still won't be able to hide it from the Fremons. Breaking the contract on their territory will not only cause trouble for subsequent operations. It will also attract the dissatisfaction of mutant teams from other countries." She slowly extended 2 fingers. "Second, the cost-effectiveness of taking action without authorization is too low." The group looked at her in puzzlement, and Yang Xinxin explained, "In fact, among the mutant teams from various countries, only we have captured a super-large mechanical life form and tens of thousands of mass-produced machines. These are enough for us to study, and with the ability to be Karen, in the future we will be able to replicate them on our own. Not to mention, we even have a way to crack their energy sources. So if there is another war, I'm afraid only the super-large mechanical life forms will be of value, and the mass-produced machines will be of little value. The key point is that according to Alexei, among the mechanical life forms, there are even more powerful humanoid creatures. That's the most troublesome thing. I think we'd better conserve our energy and not rush into action." She pondered for a moment, looked at Zhang Yi next to her, and said leisurely, "And according to my guess, the Fremons will probably not let us go out immediately. Their goal is to borrow the power of the mutants in other countries while preserving their own forces. Then, we can also let other teams of mutants explore the way for us first." Zhang Yi slapped his thigh. "Xinxin is absolutely right. In fact, that's what I was thinking too." Fatty Su laughed, walked up behind him and poked Zhang Yi on the arm. "Boss, you're so smart. When did you come up with that?" Zhang Yi said nonchalantly, "As soon as Xinxin finished speaking, I immediately thought of it." The others couldn't help but laugh. Zhang Yi wasn't embarrassed at all. "Anyway, I still say the same thing. Safety first. Before we figure out the real dangers of the mechanical civilization, we must never take risks out of greed." The group nodded, and then went back to prepare for the battle that could break out at any time. Ling walked over to Zhang Yi, sighed, and patted Zhang Yi on the shoulder. "Boss, you're really calm. If you do this, a good opportunity will be left to others for nothing." Zhang Yi smiled indifferently. "I'd rather do nothing than make a mistake." Ling was speechless, shook her head and walked away. She put her hands in the pockets of her gray combat uniform, which wrapped her petite body tightly, but her face was full of frustration. What an incomprehensible human being. Why are you so steady when you obviously have such strong abilities? In the following time, Zhang Yi and the others never received any notification from the Fremons to go out and carry out combat missions. However, the mutant teams from other countries successively received their own mission objectives and left the city of Samarin. Zhang Yi of course knew that this was Prodaja's deliberate retaliation, but he didn't care at all. During this time, he was working with Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen to study the secrets of mechanical life forms. Ling had been living with them, but Zhang Yi's team would always send Deng Shintong away when they were having a meeting. Although she was a spy sent by Deng Shintong, she had been in Fremons for such a long time that she might have become a double agent. It could not be ruled out that she was selling Zhang Yi's intelligence to other countries. Time just flew by, and the week passed without a single incident. The teams that came to Fremons were all top-notch mutant teams from all over the world. Although they were troubled when facing the mechanical legions due to their defensive force fields and fearless fighting style, with their formidable strength and greed for the technological products of a super-era civilization, humanity achieved victory after victory. Fremon's engineering troops went to clean up the battlefield, and in this way, they collected 30% of the spoils without spending a single soldier. It can be said that they made a fortune, which made Prodaja and the others extremely excited.